Well, I see that it's 3 o'clock straight up, and we have, we just topped 82 participants in this Zoom call right now. I want to welcome everybody to this Afri New Investigator workshop that we have this afternoon. Today's workshop will be focused on agricultural science and technologies, and I'll get into more detail on that. Before we get going here, I do want to maybe introduce a couple people to you. We do have the chat feature open, and as we get going, we have Catherine Dentzman, who's our new program specialist here at NIFA. She'll be monitoring the chat, and in some cases, when it's just deemed best to just go ahead and answer that in the chat while the presentations are going on, we have Olivia Moreno that'll be answering a lot of those questions, and other program specialists attending to that. But after the end of the PowerPoint presentation, we'll open up the questions and have a discussion at that point in time, mainly by just posing your questions in the chat box, and then Katie Dentzman will read off the question, and one of the NPLs that are on board here will answer it verbally that way. So that way we get a discussion that's going on, mediated through the chat. Now I see we have 102, so we have a very good participation here. I'll share my screen.
And just to be clear with everyone, you can put the questions, it's called Q&A, so it's a little different from the chat function.
Okay. Good point. And if someone could confirm that you see the PowerPoint. Okay, we'll get going here. So welcome again to this overview of Afri Agricultural Systems and Technology Program Area. Afri has many program areas, and we have those broken out throughout this week for various webinars like this one for new investigators. Today, for Ag Systems and Technologies program area, which is part of the Ag Systems division here within NIFA. First of all, we'll have 3 program areas that we'll emphasize. One of those is the designated code is A1521, and that's Engineering for Agricultural Production Systems. Then we'll hear about A1531, which is Bioprocessing and Bioengineering. After that, it will be A1511, which is Nanotechnology for Food and Agricultural Systems. Now we have some other programs that you'll hear about at this webinar as well, and these are cross-cutting areas of Afri. When we say cross-cutting, we have several divisions, or we have several disciplinary areas that have come together with expertise and with funding to support these particular priority areas. So among those, we have 1541, which is Data Science for Food and Agricultural Systems. We have A1261, or Interdisciplinary Engagement in Animal Systems. We call that the IDEAS program. We have A1701, Critical Agricultural Research and Extension. And then finally, 1411, or A1411, which is Water Quantity and Quality. We'll begin right now by discussing A1521. That's priority area by Steve Thompson. And Steve, I'll just hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. The Engineering for Ag Production Systems, A1521, it's an engineering program. The budget is gone up to $650K per project. The project period in this one is 3 to 4 years still. We can accept either research projects or integrated, which in addition to research, you have education or extension in combination. You need at least two out of the 3 specified. The grant types, pretty standard stuff here. We have the standard grants, conference grants with the letter of intent. We are accepting those, as you probably know, we're accepting those throughout the year. There's no deadline with those. So as they come in, we evaluate those via ad hoc review. Then the strengthening standard, new investigator, strengthening conference, seed grant proposals are available not only to those in strengthening eligible institutions, but for new investigators also. That's something new. Okay, so the deadline on this is July 15th, 2021. I'll give you let me mention the seed, as you may know, are up to 300K each. The stats, we had about a 40% increase in the number of proposals from 2019 to 2020. The funding rate it's a highly competitive program. It was around 9 to 10% this last time. So that's all I have for that. And Vicki Finkenstadt is going to talk about our next slide. Next. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself here.
There you go. Right.
Talk about the funding priorities. So the funding priorities are listed there, and I bolded several aspects of this. We are interested in developing automation and mechanization for labor-intensive tasks. You may incorporate both drone and unmanned ground vehicle technologies in these. We're interested in advanced computational engineering methods, and also ag systems data as a portion of this. Now, if it's highly data centric, a different program, A1541 would be more applicable, and Ann Stapleton will talk about that one later. I point out we wanted to bring out a couple of things. We're interested in technologies that prevent disease spread and pathogens in agricultural systems. Also, this isn't widely known, but the language in the RFA does allow for development of assistive technologies for disabled farmers or disabled farmer veterans. This isn't, the Agribility program is an extension program. So that's separate from this. And that'll be talked about later too. And also irrigation. We actually, Brad Ryan and I actually broke out several aspects of that. Now, this is not all inclusive. We are interested in plant agriculture, animal agriculture, aquaculture also. So now I think we can go to A1531.
Okay. Vicki Finkenstadt will present this one.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Kevin. Thank you all and welcome to our webinar. I'm glad to be here with you. A1531 is Bioprocessing and Bioengineering, and it seeks proposals that improve existing production processes and engineer solutions for the sustainability and profitability of food and agriculture. Similar to the other programs, we are accepting grant types and the standard grant types, the conference grants, and strengthening grants, including the new investigators and the postdoc and pre-doc. Once again, it's $650,000 per project for a total of 3 to 4 years. And this program is eligible for additional funding for partnerships of $150,000. The details about how you can get the additional money for partnerships, you'll need to look at the RFA for it. The application deadline for this program is July 1st of 2021. Dr. Rucker will discuss A1531's funding priorities. Desiree?
Thank you, Vicki.
Next screen.
Next, yeah. All right. A1531 Bioprocessing and Bioengineering funds innovative solutions to improving production efficiency and capacity for biomass and bioenergy, utilization of waste products, development of agricultural-based products such as bioplastic, addresses long-term sustainability with economic, social, and environmental outcomes, and identifies barriers to adoption of biological solutions. Let's see, I think I have, yes, and also identifies factors that constrain or encourage the adoption and diffusion of agriculturally relevant engineered products and processes. Over to you, Honda.
Okay, our next area is nanotechnology for agricultural and food systems. That's A1511, and Dr. Hongda Chen will lead this one.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and welcome to this session. The nanotechnology for agriculture and food system. The program offers the same budget seeding, 650,000 for a project up to 5 years, 3 to 5 years. The program only solicited the research projects, so no integration or other types. And the grants type are standard as the couple that you heard of before. It has a standard conference and a bunch of phase grants. And I highlighted 3 of those: standard, strengthening standard, and the new investigator, because those standard grants were subject to the budget ceiling that are listed above. While these other grants, conference, strengthening conference, seed equipment, and sabbatical leave, these have their own budget ceiling requirements. Look up IFA for the details and make sure that your proposed budget will not exceed the budget ceiling, because they will be returned without a review. The proposal for this program deadline is May 27 at 5 p.m. A word of advice is that try to submit that not at 5 o'clock, sometime better be a couple of days before that, just in case that there's you run into some technical glitches. And the policy for this is very firm. If you pass the deadline, and it will be returned without review. This program, we have Dr. Jim Dabrowski, who is also on this panel as a co-program director for this one. Next slide, let's look at the program scope and the priority. And what I want to point out is that the program priority really is to advance nanoscale science, engineering, and nanotechnology, and to address the societal challenges facing agriculture and the food system. And you recognize that there's a Boolean operand and in between these 2 phrases, because it is very important that we support the research, this particular program, support the research at the intersection of these 2 elements. First one is to advance cutting-edge nanoscale science and nanotechnology. And number 2, it must be relevant to the agriculture and food challenges, right? And if you just look at advanced nanoscale science, National Nanotechnology Initiative supported by multiple agencies has a collective annual budgets of nearly $2 billion. So there are ample funding opportunities at other agencies like NIH, NSF, DOD, DOE, NIST, and many other agencies. For our program, we must stress that the nanotechnology you propose here must address the agriculture and the food challenges. All right, the intersection is very important. The several emphasis areas as listed here are 6 of them. The first one is to look at the value-added product. And then these are based on nanobiomaterials that you can derive from agriculture and forest materials. And the application could be food or non-food application. If you read the RFA carefully, you notice there's exclusion for this priority. That says the application primarily address packaging, food contact surveys, food safety, agrochemicals, environment, health, and other aspects of agriculture and food production will be accepted. However, the application address how engineered nanomaterials affect the nutrition or quality attributes of the food are not solicited in this program. There are other programs that, that you may look up. For instance, the program A1343, Food and Human Health, run by Dr. Lisa Jens, that there are some provision for the nanoscale phenomenon structures in the nutrition and the human health aspect. Please do consult with Dr. Jens if you have interest submitted the proposal in that space. The second one is about the safety of engineered nanoparticles, particularly look at the environmental health and the safety assessment of engineered nanoparticles. Again, these nano-engineered particles must be relevant to the agricultural production or food or the production environment, right? Mm-hmm. Third one is to look at the sensor for various different applications. Nanotechnology enabled the smart sensor for accurate, reliable, and cost-effective. I want to emphasize cost-effective for the agriculture and the food uses. These will be used for early and rapid detection of targets of interest in the agricultural production and food safety, like pathogens and the virus and the allergens, agrochemicals, residues in the food, and so on and so forth. Sensor work, the nanotechnology in there. The fourth one is to get cost-effective distributed sensing network for supporting intelligent precision agriculture. And the intention is that develop a sensor for the network for the information can optimize the agricultural chemical inputs, water inputs in that space. So the deploy the resources based on the needs. The next one is monitoring the physiological biomarkers that can be observed for the optimal crop and animal productivity and health. And the last one is focused on the fundamental side of nanoscale science. Look at the new discovery and characterization of nanoscale phenomenon, processes, and structures that are relevant and important to the agriculture and the food. I may just finally add that some statistics to that. Over the last 2 years, we received about 80 or so applications, and we found 12 to 13 projects with a total budget a little bit over $5 million. So you can do the math, and the successful rate is 15 to 16%, which is very competitive, even within the Afri family. And I want to particularly point out that each year we were able to fund 2 new Investigator Awards, which stands about 15–16% of the total awards that we gave. So I hope you take this as an encouraging sign and then submit the proposal and give a shot. So Kevin, the next one.
Okay. Thank you, Hongda. I appreciate it very much. And I'm hoping, there we go. Sorry about all that. All right, we'll start now getting into our cross-cutting programs or program priority areas. First one of those is A1541, which is the data science for food and agricultural systems. And Ann Stapleton will lead this discussion. Ann.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to see that so many folks are attending this new investigator outreach webinar. I'd like to talk about cross-cutting programs, and cross-cutting programs are cross-cutting because they cover multiple areas of Afri. So these have different kinds of requirements. So for data science for food and agricultural systems, DSFAS, program area priority code A1541. You'll notice that this is the same priority code as the prior FACT program, but a different title and different priority areas now. So I'll go through each of those. Next. So here there are multiple ways to address these cross-cutting data science and agricultural systems areas that are supported in this program. There are standard research grants for a typical Afri amount, 650,000 for projects of 3 to 5 years. There's coordination innovation networks with a larger budget of 1 million for periods of up to 5 years. They have special requirements, so make sure that you read the RFA if you're considering those. The project types include research projects or integrated projects only. Next. And then the grant types, as is common in Afri, include the standard conference, which have a different funding level. So make sure you check that. And conferences also require a letter of intent across Afri, including this program. And phase. So if you have questions about phase, please do check the RFA or ask us. We can explain the complexity of phase if you have particular questions about that. Next. Okay, coordination networks with the larger budget have slightly different grant types. So they are only standard and phase, and that phase is only strengthening standard. The application deadline is July 29th in 2021. And there are many program officers involved in this program, including you just heard from Dr. Chen, who's one of those national program leaders involved. We have a mailbox specifically for this program, so please address your inquiries there, and the appropriate national program leader will answer your question. Next slide. Now let's talk about what kinds of things are funded under this program. Here we're talking about data science broadly defined to enable systems and communities to effectively utilize data, improve resource management, and integrate new technologies and approaches that furthers U.S. food and agricultural enterprises. Next. This is something I am asked often, and I wanted to emphasize this. The most competitive programs in the proposals in this program are strong in both agricultural science and data science. So they're equally well grounded in both of these areas. Next. Here I've just summarized a bit, and I encourage you to look at the RFA for details. The applications for research and integrated projects must address one or more of the following data science priorities in relation to food and agricultural systems. So there's a lot of flexibility about what specific food and agricultural system that you address. There are some focus areas in the data science end, however. Particularly, there's a list that would come under the heading of analysis of agricultural data. There's a set that come under connecting of multi-scale, multi-domain, or multi-format data. And then another set where we discuss agricultural applications and human technology data interactions. So please do look at the details under each of those categories. I also wanted to mention next, please do see the RFA. I've only summarized the high points here, and there are many additional details available, including some specialty areas. There's an AI emphasis area with specific rules that you might want to consider. And there's also extensive detail on the coordinated Innovation Networks projects. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Ann. Appreciate it.
Next person.
Our next cross-cutting area is interdisciplinary engagement in animal systems. We call this the IDEAS program. And I believe Ganesh Bora will be the presenter for that.
Hey, good afternoon. And thank you, Kevin. As Kevin said, that it is an interdisciplinary, that means multiple areas, program areas, and ag system, animal production system. There are multiple divisions involved in it, and I represent the ag system and technology group in this IDEA program. And it's $1 million projects for 3 to 5 years, and all integrated. It has to have research and one other component, that's extension or education or both. The grant types are standard, conference, and phase. And as you might know, the seed grants are $300,000 for 2 years. And the deadline is again 15 July and 5:00 p.m. It's like a hard deadline. No extension, as you heard from all the programs. And Steve Smith, myself, and Andrew Siblis is leading this program. Next. And as you said, this is interdisciplinary, and many a times if we see, say, for engineering purpose, there's one engineering program, but how much engineering, that's a hardcore engineering. So if you have more application side, then you might think of this program. And precision livestock farming is quite prevalent here in this program, in addition to environmental synergies and societal aspects. This is a very new program, and it has started in 2019 and 2020. Till now, 13 projects has been funded, and we are looking for more funds this year, and hopefully we'll be able to fund more on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ganesh. Our next cross-cutting area is Critical Agricultural Research and Extension, or the CARE program. The priority code is A1701. And Jim Dobrowolski will be presenting this particular one.
Thank you very much. Hi there, folks, and good afternoon. Glad to have you. We're going to talk a little bit about the CARE program, Critical Ag Research and Extension. We call it CARE. It's easy to remember. It's A1701. The budget is typically $300,000 per project for project periods of 1 to 3 years. The project types, and this is unique. It's integrated, which means that it's going to be research, but it's focused on extension, not education. This is research and extension because this program area is focused on important research that's almost at the cusp of being delivered. And so we're looking for the real transferability of this work. And those are the only projects, integrated and research and extension. The grant types are standard and phase, but we're only going to be funding strengthening standard, this regular standard, strengthening standard, and new investigator as part of the phase. The application deadline is June 17th, 5 o'clock Eastern time. And we have 3 national program leaders that are working on this, myself, Vijay Nandula, and Andre Sibbles. Next slide, please. So the funding priorities for CARE are really looking at critical challenges and opportunities that research and extension together can address to improve our nation's agricultural and food systems. Those projects should include integrated activities based on rigorous research combined with effective extension. The involvement of stakeholders to develop and rapidly apply new knowledge or practices. So we're looking for some areas where we might potentially have some co-production involved. We expect you to contribute this work to contribute to the overall well-being of the people, communities, plants, and animals involved in and affected by agriculture and food production systems. And we want you to read the request for applications, the RFA, carefully for this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and don't go away because you're on deck for this next one as well. Water quality and water quantity and water quality A1411.
That's right. So the next one is water quantity and quality. We call it water Q and Q. It's 1411. The proposed budget requests have been bumped up to $750,000 per project, including indirect costs for project periods of 3 to 4 years. We are looking for research only here, so no integrated projects, just research. The grant types are standard, conference, and phase, again, with strengthening standard, new investigators, conference, seed, equipment, and sabbatical. The application deadline is June 10th, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern time again. And I am the individual in charge of this one. Next slide. So we've got quite a few funding priorities, but the main one is really focused on reducing the freshwater demand, both from groundwater and surface water sources for irrigation, and the nutrient demand for maximum crop production. So we're reducing the water footprint and we're reducing the nutrient footprint of agriculture as part of this program. So we're going to look at the reduction of the use of fresh water and the improvement of agricultural resilience and sustainability by innovative approaches, tools, and technologies. We're going to evaluate the physical and biogeochemical interactions, fluxes, fate and transport, transformation, and storage of single or multiple nutrients, pathogens or chemicals of emerging concern or environmental concern, of a variety of source waters as it relates to agroecosystem productivity, and on associated natural resources and agricultural environments. We're also going to be looking at the mitigation of soil salinity from the use of poor quality water sources, including recycled water, for example, in agriculture. And we're focused on the conservation of surface and groundwater, the quantity of water through the research of agroecosystems, and lastly, the mitigation and or measurement of soil erodibility and erosion to sustain agroecosystems. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. All right, we have other related programs as well that we want to talk to you about. And I'll ask Steve Thompson to come back and cover these. Steve.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Next, I believe I have many subparts here. Well, the National Robotics Initiative needs to be talked about because there are some similarities between this one and the engineering program I showed you before. And basically, it's just what it says. It's development of scalable robotic technologies and multi-agent teams. And we're interested in focusing on labor-intensive tasks, improved efficiency, inspection and monitoring, and among other things, coupled UGVs, UAVs, and what have you. The total funding for that program is $5 million, and it's $1.2 million per grant maximum. The deadline, May 3rd, 2021. Ganesh Bora will be taking it over as the lead from NIFA after the next panel. The funding rate for this program is held pretty steady at about 15%. Next. Cyber physical systems. These are engineered systems that are built from and depend on the seamless integration of computation and physical components. The agriculture topics address real-time data analytics and control and smart and connected communities. The total funding, also 5 million, 1.2 million per grant. And then there is an additional, there's a possibility for additional money if yours is applicable for a transition to practice. And it's quite a simple way to develop the budget for this. You can write the budget within the narrative. So, you know, you don't have to have a separate budget page. Now, here's the trick. There's no deadline this year. This is the first time we've had this, and I've already received a couple questions about how that's going to work. This is what NSF decided to do. The way I think it's going to work is this. I've talked with David Corman. When we feel we've got enough applications to run a panel, that's what we'll do. Typically, NSF runs a 2-day panel with about 16 proposals maximum. That's usually the max. Now, that does not mean we will fund, say, 5 proposals out of that 16. Okay, we're going to stagger it. We want it to be fair. So I suspect we will have a panel sometime in the fall. And since the deadline is December 31st, we will probably have a panel early next year also. Okay, so that's the way I think it's going to happen. Next. AI institutes. You all know about this probably. I won't say too much about the next RFA that is being developed because we are developing it now. Ann Stapleton and myself, along with 3 others at NIFA, we have a team of 5, including 2 division directors, Kevin Kephart and Peter Montevalli. Ganesh Borat is involved too. We will still involve the core principles of AI and specify stakeholder engagement. Beyond that, I don't want to say too much because we are working on it now.
Hey, Steve, a quick question. Given that these are, we're teaming up with NSF on these, anything you need to highlight for submission? Do they do this through grants.gov, for example?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The way this works is you're going to use FastLink. Don't use grant.gov because of translation issues, but you're going to submit your proposal to NSF as an NSF proposal. And then NSF panels this. I, or whoever the NIFA representative is, helps select the panel. Then it is paneled at NSF. We rank the proposals very much like we do here at NIFA. And then after that, it's all in NIFA's, the ball's in NIFA's court. We fund the proposal. Next. Agorability. I mentioned the possibility of developing technologies for disabled farmers and farmer veterans. Brad Ryan can explain this extension program a little bit more. Brad?
Thank you, Steve. So Agorability really is it's an extension only program. It's funded through the Farm Safety and Youth Farm Safety Extension 3D line item. Eligible applicants are the extension directors or extension systems at the land-grant universities, either 1890 or 1862 institutions. You can partner with 1994, and you are required to partner with a nonprofit disability organization. The idea is that you provide the expertise and that comes from both the extension service as well as the expertise that comes from nonprofit disability organizations that serve people with disabilities. The funding is a little unique. The program was started back in 1991. They wanted to launch it as a national project. We didn't have a lot of funding, so we wanted to fund as many projects as we could the first year. So what we did is we funded multiple projects with the first year funds and then basically guaranteed continuations based upon performance for the next 3 years. So they're funded as 4-year projects. They're currently funded at a maximum $180,000 per year over 4 years, which totals a grant of $720,000. The proposals come out once a year, or the request applications comes out once a year. We are going to be paneling the current ones for 2021 in a couple of about 3 or 4 weeks. There are currently 20 state projects, state and regional projects funded, and a national project that supports the state projects and those states that are not funded in terms of what they can do. The best way to find out more about this program, and you really need to do this, look at the website listed here. That is the website that's developed by the National Agribility Program. It also gives you contacts and links to the projects that are funded at states and regions. So you're going to want to check that if you're in one of those states or regions. There are those projects that are currently funded, and there are projects that are called affiliate programs. Affiliate programs are ones that have been funded in the past. They're not currently funded, but they are still continuing to keep the program going. And that is one of the things they ask, is that that the projects do develop a plan to keep the program going once the funding has ended.
Thank you, Brad. And there's the information on the maximum funding. So next. So I want to point you to another program, Small and Medium Farms. Now I showed you A1521, which is the engineering program, but many times you'll have some needs, decision support systems. Technology is pervasive in all of these programs, but this is one to consider. And there are many integrated projects funded in this program. And I'll have Dennis Bodagi talk a little more about this one.
Thank you, Steve. This is Dennis Bodagi. I'm a program leader here in NIFA. I do appreciate your asking me to talk about it. With the small and medium-sized farms, it's one of the 40 programs within the Afri. And the maximum you can request here is 650,000. And as it says in here, you want to ensure that you are looking at working on efforts that are going to be beneficial to small and medium-sized farms. What do we really mean when we say small and medium-sized farms? These are, according to the Farm Topology of Economic Research Service, these are the projects or efforts within the system that have gross revenue of less than 350,000 to be considered small farm. And if it's between 350,000 and 1 million, that is medium size. Over 1 million is large. So it has to be relevant to small and medium sized. And we have several priorities that you could look into. And the average or the success rate here is about 15 to 20%. We get anywhere from 60 to 75 proposals every year. And Leland Dixon and Kerry Dorsman, they work with me on this very program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Welcome.
Next, let's see what's up. Of course, there's the SBIR program, if you have a small business. And let's see, next subheading there we go. You have, this is 100K for 8 months for phase 1, and then 650K for 2 years. There's also a rider on there for help to market this for 6,500. Anyway, Vicky Finkenstadt is going to take this one over next year. I'm going to be a co-leader. I will mention one thing about this. If you do have a small business, if you're not registered in SAMS and you don't have a DUNS number, you're not going to get past the front door when you're applying in grants.gov. So that's a caution. Next. Well, there's the... yeah, this is
You wanted to go right there?
Right, this is the website for the SBIR program. It shows the phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay.
Next. Okay, I think there is a subheading there. Let's try it. There we go. I only mentioned this one. There's not a solicitation out right now, but we are involved in this. And I just want you to know that we are interested in providing rural broadband, and we're going to continue. The new administration is very, very interested in the rural broadband issue. So we contributed $1 million to a large project that's led by US Ignite and the Northeastern University. And with our input, they are selecting a platform at the present time through competition to implement these broadband plans. Next. This one may seem out of place, but let's see, I think there's a subheading here too. Next, yes. However, this is a non-Afri program. It's got its own RFA. And the reason I show this is many engineering faculty that were peers, that are peers, have had these fellowships for their PhD studies, including me. I had one at the University of Florida. It's a great program. It's worth checking into as a new faculty or someone who's been around a while. Basically what happens is you apply and you get the money, and then you select through competition within your department to award fellowships to high caliber students in superior academic standing. So I think this is one that you should consider in addition to all the programs I've shown you. Next. Okay, back to Kevin. This is the sum up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And this is really the final slide, and that is we do have some handy resources available on our website for such things as frequently asked questions in regard to new investigators. And then we also have frequently asked questions for Afri and for Afri-Face. These are great resources that we provide guidance and answers to for questions that as the name implies, often come up. And actually, I go to these from time to time for our own internal use as well. So with that, I think what we want to do next is, I believe Katie Densman and Olivia have been monitoring the Q&A, and I'll do a stop share here so we can try to address those.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the first one we got, which is, could you please give an example of value-added product? And that was for the nanotechnology program. And I think, Victoria, you wanted to answer that first, and then Hongda, you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, sure. Value-added products are defined by the USDA, the Rural Business Development Agency. A value-added product is a change in the physical state or form of a product. For example, if you took corn and you refined it into cornstarch, corn protein, corn oil, those are technically value-added products. If you do it further and you take cornstarch and you make, say, a bioplastic from it, then that is a value-added product. The other definition is that it's the production of a product that enhances its value. So for example, organically produced food is technically value added as well. Hongda.
Yes, I think that Vicky gave you very official definition and explained it very well. The thing, the process added a value to commodity products and then certainly consider value added. And I think in that space that the spirit of pursuing high value products will be very intriguing, very challenging. Let me just give you one example. the nanotechnology program found a project that utilizing the protein, specific protein responsible for the photosynthesis in green leaves. It's called the photosystem 1. And this is a nanostructure protein that the research is going to harvest the protein, say, from spinach leaves, and then use that to make a solar cell that converts solar energy directly into the electricity, so as a portable power supply, like a battery. And that is a very high value added product. I tell you, that particular project has achieved about a third of current AA battery output. And think about the research further going, and then we possibly can see that produce a bio-based portable power supply. And one of the exciting things here is that the protein, the photosystem 1, being put into the abiotic setting as the energy converter, has been functioning for about a year without reducing the efficiency of power output. That is amazing. Put a biological, biomaterial, biomolecule into the abiotic environment, and then you can see that output. So it's very exciting in that space. And I encourage all the scientists to think about and novel ideas and create a new value-added products.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we had one question that Olivia Marina wanted to answer, which was, could faculty of any experience level apply for the seed grants under AST?
At any experience level. Depending on what your objectives are, if you have something that you have an early idea on, you could be at any level in your faculty position, but ideas come when they come. So that's anytime.
If I heard the question correctly, and there is, this is about a new investigator, right? And so there's eligibility for a new investigator.
It's for seed grants specifically.
Oh, for seed grant. Okay, yeah, sorry. See Mark come on, Mark Randall.
Okay, so I talked about this quite a bit on Monday. We have two types of seed grants. First, I mentioned were the new investigator seed grants. So only new investigators can apply for those. And you have to be within your first 5 years of your first career track position. So first 5 years of your first career track position, and you have to meet the other eligibility requirement for seed grants listed in the RFA. Second type of seed grant is for strengthening. So you have to be at an institution. These are for degree granting people at degree granting institutions only. So you need to be in at an institution in an EPSCoR state, or at a minority serving institution, or at a small to mid-size institution. The latter two groups, you have to not be among the most successful institutions. And the RFA has a table that lists the most successful. So if your institution is on the table, then it's in that table, it's among the most successful, and you're not eligible under those two categories. But you still could be under the EPSCoR. So new investigator seed grants, strengthening seed grants. New investigator seed grants don't have to be at degree granting institutions. Strengthening seed grants have limited eligibility, have different but restricted eligibility also. And you must be at a degree granting institution for strengthening seed grants. Preliminary data is not required.
Great, and we actually have a bit of a follow-up question to that. which is I had 2 publications prior to my PhD, 7 during my PhD, and 7 during my 4-year postdoc. Am I eligible for the new investigator seed grant if I just started my assistant professorship position?
So I would say that although you've been productive, that would not be an excessive publication record that would disqualify you.
Okay, we have another follow-up.
My advice would be send your CV to the program leader overseeing a program of interest and let them make the determination, because that's what we always ask for, to make that determination.
Okay, we have another question about a new career track appointment in 2019, but they worked for a company for more than 5 years after earning their PhD. Would that person be eligible as a new investigator?
So I seem to be answering this type of question like every day, multiple times. So this is one of those ones that fall in the gray area. And I would say, since it's only been 5 years since your PhD, that's not much longer than a postdoc, a typical postdoc. And so I would say you're still eligible. When that interval starts to creep up towards the 10-year mark, then I would say that you're probably starting to be too senior and have gained too much wisdom to be competing against the people that have just come out of their programs, educational programs. Okay.
Okay, next question. Yeah, of course. Is on-farm research required for care projects? In other words, how important are on-farm projects in care grants?
So on-farm projects are important to CARE. We are looking for stakeholder input into the functionality of the project, but it's not exclusively that way. And so, it could be, we have funded care projects that have also been hoop house or greenhouse studies. And so there are different ways to approach it, but think about that. We do look at them carefully, and we do emphasize stakeholder input.
I answered a couple of questions about NNF before, but I'll say it globally. To find out more about the national needs, I've got at least 3 or 4 questions answered about the National Needs Fellowship Program. Just find the RFA on the web and talk to Dr. Ray Ali, who is the lead NPL of that program.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we don't have any open questions at the moment. If anyone has any, please feel free to put them in. And like Steve said, if you've answered any that you think would be good to say out loud to everybody, feel free to chime in and mention that as well.
So are there any additional questions from our audience? Or anything that our panel of experts here, any comments you want to make while we're waiting for some additional questions to come in?
I'll just follow up what Mark said before about the, if you're at a strengthening institution, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're at a strengthening institution, you could be at any level in your faculty position to be able to apply for a seed grant. So that kind of qualifies what I mentioned before.
Okay.
Okay, we have a couple that came in. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, jump right in.
Yeah. So we had somebody ask if the funding rate will decrease because of 650K per proposal this cycle. So basically, does the funding rate change based on how much money is available overall for the program?
Afraid the answer is yes. Anybody within?
So I actually answered this one online. For this RFA that covers 2 separate years of deadlines, we are actually utilizing funding from 3 budget years. So we actually have a bit more money to cover these higher budgets. So the success rate should not drastically change. In fact, due to the amount of funding, it's possible that the success rates may be higher.
That's good news.
And I would just add the advice that it's extremely important that your proposal be a good fit to the program priorities. Choosing a program that has a weak fit because the success rate is different, it's probably not an optimal choice. Make sure that the proposal is a good fit to the program that you submit it to, and make sure that you get the program priority area right when you submit it.
And I think Anne makes an excellent point there. And I've been answering this type of question ad nauseum for about the past week or so. I think the question about success rates distracts from what the objective should be. So you shouldn't be worried about whether success rates are 15% or 20%, because you should be not targeting that 15 or 20 or 25 percentile or whatever it is. You should be trying to create the best possible proposal so that it's at the top of the pile and there's no question it's going to be funded. I think all of our success rates are within, regardless of program, are within the reasonable range. So at NIH, the percentile ranking for success is now about 9% across institute. We're in the 15 to 25 percentile. And I think that's entirely reasonable for people to be applying for, but don't focus on success rate. Focus on putting together the best possible project and proposal that you can, so that your proposal ranks number 1 or 2 overall.
Thanks, Mark. That's a really good comment.
Okay. So we have another question. What aspects should I focus on when developing a new investigator seed grant proposal as opposed to a standard grant?
If I take that one, I think as a new investigator, and especially you are talking about seed grants normally may not have any preliminary data, but standard grants, you should have some preliminary data that it is going to be successful. But in seed grant, you have a good idea, or so you should put it up there, and you may or may not have some preliminary data. And again, as a new investigator, you should be within 5 years of your career track. So between seed and standard, it's a good difference is that you need to have some preliminary data for standard and have a good team. But for the seed grant or new investigator, you may go alone, or maybe someone from your department, or maybe university, but you don't need a big team.
Yeah, seed grants are by definition high risk, high impact. So if your idea or research problem has it has the potential to be disrupting, then that's a good seed project.
So if you look in the RFA at part 2C, there is a link to a doc that tells you how to get to the Afri grant types document. And that document has descriptions of the different kinds of grants, including seed grants. And the description of seed grants is that seed grants are to provide funds to enable investigators to collect preliminary data, which may be obtained through establishing new domestic or international collaborations, or perform other preliminary activities in preparation for applying for future grants from Afri. The grants are not intended to fund standalone projects, but rather projects that will lead to further work applicable to one of the Afri program areas. So if you read through that, there's a little bit more information, and that might help you determine what you would want to apply for.
Okay, thank you. So we do have another question about success rates. Somebody wondering what the success rate is for CARE grants. I don't know if anyone knows that off the top of their head.
So CARE grants have, the last couple of years, have been averaging about 30%.
Great, thank you. Another question, any concern of adopting foreign technology?
I guess from my point of view is to make sure that you're in compliance with export control disclosure and reporting at your institution. Foreign technology in part depends on what foreign entity or nation that's involved in that. But other than that, from a NIFA perspective, I can't think of anything. Just mainly an export controls issue.
I would suggest bringing in your international partner as a subaward.
Yeah.
Well, so that we do have that intermixing of technologies. So think about that.
We should mention also that if you're going to have an international partner, there are a few countries and nations that we're not allowed to work with, and that list is on the State Department site.
Yeah, that's part of the export controls concerns.
As long as the collaboration benefits U.S. agriculture, then it's permissible.
Okay, we have a question about strengthening seed grants. My institution falls into the category of a strengthening institution. Which seed grant application will give me the higher probability of success when comparing new investigator seed grants versus strengthening seed grants?
So it doesn't really matter because you will be considered for both. Okay, you check new investigator, you check seed grant, you check strengthening. So you would be, if you're at a strengthening eligible institution and you're a new investigator, you check all those, you've checked all the boxes, so you will be considered for both. So you don't have to worry about which is the better success rate.
Okay. Suppose a proposal was submitted to a given program. Later, it was realized that that program was not a good fit and did not get a good shake based on comments and knowledge serving on another panel. What's the right strategy to pursue this proposal in another program that might be a better fit? Reach out to the NPL? I thought it might be useful to hear viewpoints from multiple NPLs.
Well, a lot of times review panels will mention if it's not a good fit, and they sometimes will suggest the program that you should apply to. Other than that, yeah, call the NPL.
And as usual, before you call the NPL, check the RFA. Make sure that there's a program in the RFA that matches your objectives. That's just sort of the basic planning part. Ensure that the objectives that you have designed fit the current active programs in the RFA. So, and then if your objectives overlap programs, you want to find which one is best. And there's where you can ask the NPLs in those programs for a joint consult. You can ask very specific questions about fit. Once you've done that initial comparison and you have some information that will let you ask informed questions about the details of fit.
And Anne and Victoria have provided excellent responses. I'll just add that even if it goes to another program, it is still a resubmitted proposal. So you should mark the resubmission box and include the one-page response to previous review and use that to your advantage because it can be very advantageous to have that extra page in there to describe things.
Great, thank you. Another question, is there any budget limit for equipment purchase in standard grants?
Yes, there is. And please check with your institution first as to the correct definition of equipment maintenance, all those other issues that go along with that, purchase agreements, etc. So your institution will help you navigate this aspect of your budget. If you have questions, you can reach out to the folks who interpret these budgetary rules. This is some part of the uniform guidance across agencies. So if you have that level of question, again, your sponsored programs office can help you reach the right expert in making sure that your interpretation for the purchase that you would need for your research fits the rules.
Great, thank you. Another question, if seed grants are not intended to fund standalone projects, how should we present them? A collection of activities under particular objectives?
I think there's a difference of interpretation of what a standalone project is. So I would say a seed grant should be able to stand alone in terms of the data collected and being able to publish that. But it's not supposed to be a terminal project. That is supposed to provide for collecting preliminary evidence to support the next project. And my advice is always to conclude the 7-page project narrative with a little statement about what the purpose of your seed grant application is. And that is to get you to the next level, which is to provide the preliminary data which is required in a standard grant application.
Thank you.
As part of the review criteria.
Is it possible to send one proposal to 2 different programs at the same time?
No.
No, okay. And then we just have one last question. If a researcher gets a standard grant or new investigator grant in the first year, can that person apply it for new investigator regular grants or seed grants the next grant cycle?
I probably ought to handle this since I wrote it up. So the question was if they get a new investigator seed grant, right? It started off with that.
So it says if a researcher gets a standard grant or a new investigator grant, can they then apply for another new investigator grant or a seed grant in the next year?
Right. So if you get a standard grant, you can never apply for a new investigator grant because you now have federal grant funding. If you get a new investigator seed grant, then you're still eligible for a new investigator standard grant, but you're not eligible for a second new investigator seed grant. So the progression there is we've provided that ladder for new investigator seed grant, new investigator standard grant, standard grant. Okay. Did I cover all of that, Catherine?
I think so. And that is all the questions that we had open.
Okay, very good. Good questions. Thanks, everybody. Are there any additional questions or comments from the panel? Let's provide some time in case, just in case anybody in our audience, we have 86 participants. We were up to 137, but pretty good attendance here. Any additional questions from our audience?
Just got a couple people saying thank you in the Q&A.
Yeah. Well, why don't we wrap it up then? If nothing's coming in, I want to thank everybody. This was very valuable time. It's always good to have these sessions, and I think they're helpful to all of us. So with that, I think that we can adjourn. Thank you very much and have a very good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.